is our main application. And you mentioned task tracking as well. We also schedule meetings in the calendar. Really what we do is we built an agentic platform that creates agents that are private, proactive, and personalized.
At scale, you have infinitely more like data and infinitely more information that makes you the domain expert. And then for another person to replicate that, they have to go and they have to do that at scale. They have to convince somebody to take a risk on them. And that's I think in the era of AI, that's anybody's defensibility, right?
But still, I think there are aspects that you should consider at this when you're launching a startup. Market size is one of them, and accelerating trends. Is there something, if it's regulatory or technological or behavioral, that is making this easier? Like,
hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents. Today with us we have Yohann Abittan. He is a founder of NewMail AI, which is an AI executive assistant for email and task manager. And he's also a founding partner at Armada Builders. And he's a product manager who worked as in Lodestar and Auto.ai, holds a master's degree in technology ventures from Carnegie Mellon University. So really excited to have him on the podcast, on the show, and to talk about AI agents and agentic technologies, especially considering that you're building something in the space. So Johan, I'll let you introduce yourself, and yeah, we can get started.
yeah, thank you very much, Philip. It's a pleasure to be here and to share a little bit about agents with your audience. I think it's a very rich and exciting topic. It's the new interface. But there's still a lot of mysteries, and not so many agents have really made it into production. So it's the perfect time to talk about this. I think you already gave a pretty good overview of my background. I started in product. I actually came from cybersecurity, and then I started to work with AI solutions. I started back in 2017 at Stanford Research Institute. It's an incubator in Silicon Valley. It's about 80 years old. Real OG institution of the Valley. And what they do is they mostly work for DARPA, so the Defense and Research Agency. And they produce a lot of IP. And then that IP, sometimes if the government doesn't want to use it, it becomes declassified. And then they put it in an incubator. They invite entrepreneurs and they say, take a look at this IP and make something cool. One of the companies that they created is Siri. And back in 2017, I got a chance to be first product manager at Auto AI, which was using the same IP from the Siri lab, but it was more developed because Siri was 2011. This was 2017. So it wasn't just speech to text. We were working on speech to intent. So actually understanding what is meant in the conversation, not just by what is being said, but by the tonality, the emotion in the voice, kind of mapping conversations. And then we applied that to mapping sales conversations. And we were building software for contact center agents. So when you call T-Mobile, whatever, you end up talking to an agent from a contact center. And what we built was a system for them that would in real time be listening, understanding where the conversation was going and making recommendations. Maybe now you should make a discount. Maybe now you should upsell to this other type of subscription, etc., from what was being said. So that was my first experience with AI. That's when I fell into the magic soup and I just became in love with this topic. Yeah, that's my starting point.
That's really cool. So like Gong.io, but like for like T-Mobile contact centers. I used to work a lot with T-Mobile when I was part of Ericsson back in my employed days. Yeah, those were fun projects. Anyways, Johan, so NewMail AI. What made you start it? What is it? Tell us a little bit about it. Educate the audience.
Yeah, with great pleasure. So after Auto, I got the chance to work at Lodestar, and Lodestar, it was a team from NVIDIA. What they were working on at NVIDIA was building the no-code platform that Fortune 500 companies could use to make their own custom vision models so that they could detect defects in product manufacturing lines and basically make good decisions based on video data. One of the projects they worked on before I joined was they worked with the biggest corn farm in America to detect disease in the corn at a very early stage of the process so that they could remove diseased corn before the storage. So that would increase the overall yield of the farm by about 5%. And so when I worked at this company for about 2.5 years, I ended up being head of product there. I learned that for an AI to make really good decisions, you need to have high quality data set. Doesn't need to be huge amount of data, but you need to have the right relevant data that kind of explains to the AI the technical term we say decision boundaries, or like when is something a yes and when is it a no. I think we all
Mm-hmm.
have the experience of CAPTCHA. You get those 9 boxes and you get told what boxes have a car in them. And then if the car sticks a little bit into just a few pixels into one more square, people often wonder like, okay, so should I click this one or not?
Mm-hmm.
That is the kind of labeling guidelines. That's how, that's where the complexity lies in training an AI to recognize things visually. It's when do you count it? Do you count it if there's 10%? Do you count it when there's 50%? If there's 2, do you count it as 1, 2, or 0? So I got to learn basically that with a small data set from a rich unstructured media like video, you could make really, really good AIs very quickly that can make great decisions. But to do that, you need to have high quality labels. So the data needs to be well structured. And basically, after ChatGPT came out, I was thinking to myself, I got an opportunity to become an entrepreneur, found my own company. And I was thinking about problems where there's a lot of unstructured data that is rich, but up until ChatGPT, nobody could extract that value, and um, and that we could get paid very quickly to extract that value. And so I had this idea. Email is a store of text that gets refreshed every day. That's huge and has a lot of value in it, has probably a lot of how your business operates. Pretty much every business that works with other businesses uses email. There's 4 billion users of email. And so I thought that'd be a good starting point. And when I started this project, I had crazy inbound demand like I'd never seen before. People sending me their entire inboxes telling me, how can you save my life? And so that was the start of the idea. And just the demand is what got me captivated by it, and learning that not everybody has the same experience. If you're in Silicon Valley, maybe your Gmail filters spam really well. If you're somewhere else, maybe it's terrible. And so it was an unsolved problem for 4 billion people. And that's where we started. But what's interesting is that today, NewMail is significantly more than just a smart inbox that organizes and responds to email. Um, we're a platform that deploys agents that automatically will structure their own data set from your inbox. So they're going to read all the emails that you sent, and they're going to start to store and synthesize information that says, this is what Philip works on, this is his company, this is his competitive advantage. It's how he positions himself against competitors. These are the objections sometimes that customers have, and this is how he diffuses them. That's the business profile that we create. Then we also create a linguistic voice, tone, style profile where we say, you write very short emails. This is how you use white space and punctuation. Sometimes you put an emoji if it's somebody from your close network. These are the people in your close network. So we build these different profiles, and then we have basically about 10 prompts that are running in production, and we select from this structured data set the most relevant data to do every task that we do, which is we prioritize emails, we categorize them into smart folders, we draft replies, we summarize them every morning. So you see, basically, even though email is our main application, and you mentioned task tracking as well, we also schedule meetings in the calendar. Really what we do is we built an agentic platform that creates agents that are private,
Mm.
proactive, and personalized, and you can get started in just a few minutes. Um, and we work mostly with companies, mostly on the selling partnership and leadership side, where people really get tons of emails and they're always pitching, answering same questions. That's kind of the bread and butter of what we do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of like a next generation of front. I don't know if you know front. They like offer a unified inbox with AI. So this is like the next gen of, I guess, of that. It's a very competitive space, right? So how do you feel like I know it's a big market, right? It's 4 billion people use email, and you said you have inbound interest, which is really cool. But how do you position yourself like differently, and how were you able to capture that inbound traction for like in a very competitive AI mail space, right? 'Cause many people are building something similar.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think email is a relatively like obvious use case, and so there are a lot of companies working on it. But the angle that we're really working on is for companies that want to use AI,
Hmm.
but they don't know the right way to empower their people to have the right tools and the right data to go forward. Uh, by having this agentic platform that structures context on a personal basis and basically makes agentic clones of all your employees, we're giving a very, very like low barrier to entry to start deploying agents and to make everybody benefit from ChatGPT without having to train everybody to go to ChatGPT, open the interface, copy paste your problem, tell them a little bit about who you are and what the context is. Uh, it's just deeply integrated today into inbox tasks and calendar. But that's just the beginning. There's a lot more unstructured channels that we want to pull from. Um, and the differentiation that we've had since the start is really pushing forward the privacy-centric design. So this is
Mm.
very valuable, sensitive data, obviously. So we actually store nothing on our own platform except from this synthesized piece of content, which is transparent, editable at any time, which is basically a page of fields. Um, and none of the emails, events, or tasks actually get stored in our system. And we have zero data retention agreements with the model providers that we use so that they
Mm.
are not even storing prompts or responses, uh, and in some cases, audit logs.
Yeah.
So that's been like one of our angles that we put forward a lot.
Did you hear? I think yesterday some judge forced OpenAI to keep logs of all the messages and all the chats. It was a big thing when they were discussing it yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's a privacy thing that people are concerned about. It's like even the private and incognito messages that you're sending to ChatGPT are not actually incognito. So they actually have violated their privacy agreement. I'm sure they'll get out of it, but I thought it was interesting to bring up because you brought up privacy, and it's a big topic, and it's a lot of
Yeah,
companies want to deploy SLMs and things like that on premise to avoid that data being leaked. So how does one start with new mail? So let's say we got our inbox indexed, and then you generate some sort of a RAG, I assume, or something like that, and then you provide us with automatic replies. Is it like a new email interface that we switch from Gmail over to NewMail, or how does it work?
good practical questions. I like it. So actually, the last platform I worked on was on-premise to avoid privacy concerns. We would actually deploy models ourselves on-premise, and we
Mm.
eventually switched to SaaS because um, privacy is important. But it turned out that in those days that we were doing Lodestar, still people preferred. Most companies would prefer convenience to be able to use any powerful model in a like secure cloud environment that they own, rather than just doing it on a very expensive hardware locally, which has other costs. Um,
Mm.
so SLMs on premise, very, very interesting. AI at the edge. I think that's where the future is going to be going, but there's still a pressure to have access to the best performance. And you talked about providers. OpenAI is definitely not the most open about their data management practices and things like this. So we also work with Anthropic, with Mistral, and with Gemini, um, and
Yep.
they are a little bit more friendly. So you asked, how do you get started with NewMail? What you do is you connect your inbox. We are about to launch our Outlook integration, but currently Google. Maybe by the time this is out, Outlook will be live. And so we use OAuth securely. You can sign in with your auth provider, Google or Microsoft. And then basically we analyze your inbox. We generate this synthesis, like I mentioned, the business profile, the linguistics profile. You can see it as soon as it's generated. And then we actually don't do RAG, we do in-context learning. So
Mm.
we pull the right fields of data into these prompts that we built
Mm.
um, when needed. Um, we didn't buy into too many of the early frameworks that came out because it seemed like kind of not clearly necessary layers of abstraction and reliance
Mm.
on small providers. So we did a lot of in context, and then basically the context window has blown up by maybe 100 times since we started, and costs have come down a lot of tokens. So we're pretty happy with this decision. Uh, so you mentioned indexing. We actually don't index. We basically have smart ways to recognize high value emails that we can learn from.
Mm.
And then we just extract and synthesize those emails with reasoning models. And then we make it available to users. They can edit anything at any time. And then iteratively, the model kind of checkpoints its data, because we're not actually training any models. We're just changing what goes into the context window. So we kind of checkpoint the data set and then iterate on it. And we'll suggest, we've made these extra learnings. Do you want to integrate them to your assistant's memories? And that's how your assistant gets better from every interaction over time.
Yeah, this is specific. This is the same conclusion we came back with, especially for like real-time voice assistants. And RAG isn't very good anyways. It's very random and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. And like moving away from it and in context memories ends up being what actually brings the most value out of LLMs versus RAG, which never pulls proper things. We've had the same thing for content generation. Like Doxy, we generate a lot of documentation, and we used to index everything in those RAG pipeline, and then it would, but it doesn't add the value that you think it does. It helps, but it's like it just isn't as good as in context memory where AI really shines. And as you mentioned, this high context windows that we are getting now, that's a big game changer because they used to be so small and there wasn't as much we could do. But so perfect. So let's talk more about kind of your vision for this space, right? So how do you feel like about like where is this technology going? As you mentioned correctly, there's lots of agents being launched, but not everybody is brave enough to launch them into actual production. Like you see all these
Yeah.
companies popping up, but I'm not seeing like tremendous amounts of like large corporations, for example, adopting them. Some of them did. They got on the hype train and they got off it really quick because it's a legal liability. So, what are some of the things that you are seeing, and how do you see this space evolving over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think these are really good questions. I think, as always with the paradigm shift, it takes a while for people to adapt. And I think AI is different than traditional software. It is a stochastic process. There's probabilities involved. And even if you use temperature zero, as you know, you're not always going to get the exact same highly consistent results. It's slightly more like a human. It can take much more flexible input, have a more flexible output. There are some very smart techniques like JSON mode that force the input to match the JSON schema so that they will
Mm.
only give you a response that you specifically in the format that you specifically designed. But that being said, there is some uncertainty. And so that is something that companies need to adapt to. When you use AI models, um, how do you select that probability distribution so every result is something that you find acceptable? That requires that you have some high quality data and that you have done, I think, some. Basically, I gave some classes at Carnegie Mellon, and I was taught by my mentor from Lodestar, who was head of AI consulting at NVIDIA Global, about data-centric AI. AI is all about the data. So the way to improve your AI is to improve your data. That's why we built tools around labeling, data cleaning, data selection. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of RAG, because when you index, when you put things in vector DBs, you're putting more space between you and the data.
Yeah.
And what you actually want to make the data really strong and make your AI really strong is have um, probably smaller amount of data, but that's highly curated, validated by humans. And when that data is really strong, then that's when you get the best out of the AI. And that's why we've built NewMail as a way to help companies structure a really, really good curated pack of data per employee and split up in this way and structured. Because I think over time, people are going to realize today, ChatGPT is great. You can really save some time on some tasks. People understand summarizing, writing templates, doing research, asking questions, formatting data. All of those things are great, but they're going to quickly become table stakes. Everybody's going to have this super Google. So how do you go to the next step that your business is actually compounding and gaining more value over time from AI and from agents? And for me, it's all about having your specialized piece of data, your context, and growing that context in a way that only you have access to that data. So if I can give an example, if we look at the world's biggest corn farm and their project of identifying disease, right? They must have had videos of 10 million corns of cob, which I guess not so many people have the same, right? And so that meant that they had maybe 1,000 pictures of 10 different kinds of corn mushrooms. And so their deep expertise of corn mushrooms ended up being really valuable for them and compounding because they could do these automated steps of selection of corn. And the reason I'm saying this is, um, interestingly, I think SaaS was an era where software people captured a lot of the value. I think that in the AI era, a lot of the value will go to the actual domain experts. So if you're a lawyer today and you start to integrate AI into your processes and you have expert curated data and you can validate at every step that what the AI is doing is valuable, then you can 10x, 100x your business in a way that us, if I may say so like this, software people, we're not able to create the next gen law firm unless we partner with expert lawyers. So I think, yeah, agents that are very domain specific and that collaborate tightly with people is how we get to the next level, and that's what we're trying to empower.
Well, it's like the same as the vertical SaaS, right? It's if you're solving a specific problem for a specific group and you have done it at scale, you have infinitely more like data and infinitely more information that makes you the domain expert. And then for another person to replicate that, they have to go and they have to do that at scale. They have to convince somebody to take a risk on them. And that's I think in the era of AI, that's anybody's defensibility, right? Because as you mentioned, anybody can take ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has memories of everything you've done, so it's very good. But if you put it into hands of employees, right? So employees will need to configure all this stuff, set it up, and and again, somebody will need to go and do it. And this is what this vertical SaaS are basically just doing. We are wrapping ChatGPT in a way that solves your specific enterprise problems. Yeah, yeah. Definitely. And what's your long-term vision for NewMail? Like, how do you see NewMail? Like, how do you see it in 5 to 10 years once it's been funded and you got all the traction points, and you got your scale. What industries are you gonna go after?
That's a good question. Um, I think we're always open to identifying what niches we can benefit the most. Currently, we're working with B2B companies that want to have that kind of really personalized AI feel because their relationships and their salespeople are managing relationships. And in order to scale up their sales, they can't just use mass outbound emailing and things like this. They need to augment themselves. So currently, we're working with this kind of, if I give you an example, like medical device salespeople. They have relationships to hospitals, they have relationships with doctors, surgeons, and their products are very expensive and they can save lives or not. And the quality of the product that they're selling is very important, but also their relationship with the people, with the doctors, with the hospitals. And the time that they make their sales is when they're on the road and when they're talking to doctors and when they're showing doctors the products. So
Mm-hmm.
we help them spend less time on admin, spend less time with their bills, with their scheduling, with their emails. And that way they can spend more time selling. And every time that we answer as them, we copy their tone, their voice, their vocabulary, the technical terms, the FAQs. And so we can really save a lot of time on specialized fields of emailing with this context of who they are, what they do, how, and what they sound like. So I think the way I see us going forward is to be the go-to platform for companies that have a strong voice and a strong vision and want AI agents that are not just generic, good ChatGPT wrappers that can do their thing. They want truly personalized AI powered agents that do how their company does, why their company does, understands and kind of portrays their mission. So what we say is we're building AI agents that are not mercenaries, that are missionaries.
Mm.
That's the longer term view.
That's that's really interesting, especially when you consider personalized context, and we know how mass emails or mass LinkedIn's are spamming these days with this really garbage personalizations, and everybody is just there's just so much outreach going on, and it's so hard to feel genuine connections. So if an AI can replicate that, that's definitely something people would love. Something we would need a Doxy, I would think, something that we would benefit from as well. So definitely, I'll have somebody from my team check it out. Um, so, what is one of the things that you learned? I know you already told us a lot of things that you learned, but what is like one of the most important things that you've learned? Like, you started your own company. How long was ago was that?
That was about a little over 2 years ago.
So, how does it feel? Like, how does your entrepreneur journey compare to your like previous employment journey? How did the transition feel for you? How do you find yourself now?
I like this question. Um, I think that in my last journey, I I got to feel the kind of the full experience of joining when there was only 3 people on the team, growing to about 25, raising almost $9 million, and then eventually running out of steam. And I was the last person on payroll, so I got to really feel that full experience. And I kind of realized. Being so early in companies, it was the second time I was first product manager. So when you're very early, you have to be very, very, very okay with ambiguity, not knowing even what you don't know. And so, like, being okay with this chaos. It's not like you have a role and these are your tasks, and at 5 p.m., you get to go home.
Hmm.
Early stage startups is very different. Your role can change from day to the next. Um, but what I found was, even though as much as a product manager, you identify with the product and you want it to be the best and you're in it so much, being a founder is very different. People call sometimes product managers mini CEOs of the product. I think that's ridiculous because the stakes are completely different, And entrepreneurship is a true continuous lesson of humility. If you think you can skip some steps because you know you're going to come back there in 3 months. So I think it's, I love being an entrepreneur, but I weigh the cost as well. It's, you have to have solid shoulders and believe in yourself, because every day you're going to get challenged. And um, if I can say one word to young entrepreneurs out there and first founder kind of journeys, and I'd love to hear also about your experience, having gone through that full entrepreneurship journey multiple times. If I would say one thing to young founders, I would say be your number one fan, and um, also don't identify too much with the micro environment. Sometimes we let how that day feels impact our mind, or how that week feels, or even maybe that month. Um, you're being really brave, building something new, and uh, just be proud of yourself for for that. Not everybody's going to make $1 billion unicorn, but it's still something to be proud of.
And I mean, the goal should always be to build a sustainable business, right? This, like, unicorns are rare, right? That's why they're called unicorns. And if you approach building a venture as I'm going to get a big investor to write me a check and believe in me, this is going to be a journey full of disappointment. And that was my early years of my journey. Eventually, you see this journey as your kind of spiritual practice, almost like it's almost like your go every day is you have to, as you mentioned, you have to just stay positive. And it's a lonely place. One CEO told me when I was starting this, why do you want to do this? He said it's a very lonely thing to do. Like, you think you think it's going to be exciting, it will be exciting, but it's going to be you, it's going to be you, population, you're going to have all these employees, and you're going to feel like I am alone, I am the only one who. But the truth is, you are the founder, and if you are a part of a team, there's two or three founders, it feels less alone, but it still feels lonely. I don't know. I can't explain it. It just feels like. But
You're 100% right. There are some tasks as a founder that you can't share with the team, and that kind of weighs on you. And I really recommend to find communities of founders
yeah,
where you can share on that level, and especially if you can find a small group that you trust each other, and you can tell them when you think everything is blowing up, and they can tell you, well, that's still progress from last week. That's incredibly valuable, and I really recommend that to every entrepreneur, to try and find your peers.
yeah. That's having a support network of people who believe in you is the most, because a lot of people are not going to believe in you. Everybody wants you to secretly fail, right? Secretly, everybody you meet is
Yeah.
like, this fucking, he's never going to get anywhere. But the thing is, it's like, as you mentioned, it's a journey of humility. Every day, you need to be grateful that you were given this opportunity to build a great company. And if it's going to be a unicorn one day, well, then you've done your job right. But if it's going to be $1 million business, I remember I was talking to the CEO of Crunchbase at the Web Summit some time back, and he said something to an extent of, you know, I raised all this money, but like one of my friends, she runs this flower delivery business. She makes $20 million a year. She's wealthier than me. And everybody knows Crunchbase. You probably don't even know that person that runs the delivery startup, but they're making real cash. And if you can have a 5-10 million ARR company, why do you even need VCs? Like, in many cases, it's such an overkill. Just keep growing your business. You know?
I'm exactly on the same page as you, Philip. I think there's a lot of people who think the startup life is a lot of posturing and looking cool. It's really not about that. It's about being enraged by the state of a problem, and falling in love with the people who have that problem, and trying to talk to them as much as possible, and find ways to be agile and solve a problem. And I think that's the key, that's the core. Uh, and like I mentioned, how did I choose this project? When I was working on no-code computer vision for industrial
Mm.
processes, it was extremely difficult to find people who wanted to share about that pain. They were like deep data scientists inside big organizations, and we were kind of almost displacing them. or like giving them more projects, but that requires strategy and whatever. So I love this project because the feedback loop of people saying, this problem is so bad, please solve it. And as an early stage founder, you need a feedback loop of something that is working to give you the fuel to get to the next stages and the next tractions and the next milestones. And if I look back at what NewMail looked like when we first launched it, basically people would accept to forward me an email, and then I would Zapier it into GPT 3.5 and reply to them. And then if they really wanted to try it next level, I would configure their inbox myself with what was it, an XML of Gmail filters that they could upload. It was really bits of tape and glue and things. And now we've come such a long way. Um, I think there was one lesson I was given, which makes perfect sense. If you're going to launch a startup, it's important to find an accelerating trend. Because if you write something that is accelerating, you will also accelerate. So going from GPT 3.5 to 4 to 4.0 to 4.1, their naming is horrible, by the way. It's just made such a huge change in what we're able to do with how much data for how much cost that the business is getting easier over time. Even though it's getting heated and lots of people are doing things, it's also a big pie, like I mentioned. 4 billion people, obviously not everybody who has email needs and has the ability to pay for an agent. But still, I think there are aspects that you should consider at this when you're launching a startup. Market size is one of them, and accelerating trends. Is there something, if it's regulatory or technological or behavioral, that is making this easier? Like if we take Uber, which is a classical traditional startup example, Uber was riding on mobile having GPS, but also the behavioral change of people believing that you could trust someone because of what an app told you. 10 years before that, nobody would sit in a car of somebody that they met on the web. So these are interesting things, and when they converge, sometimes you can get a real explosion.
Right. And it's a big market, as you mentioned. Look at Doxy. We have so many knowledge bases that recently launched. There are so many competitors. But if you stick around and you keep improving, you keep talking to your customers and keep making your product better, in 5 years, you'll probably be like one of the 10 companies that stuck around because everybody's just they're going to build something. They will see. It's hard. They're going to quit. But you're gonna be there, so you have to stick around, like you mentioned. Sticking around builds a reputation. People know you. They know you're not gonna pack away and run away, and like, because businesses have to trust you with their data. So it's a long journey. It's a long journey. To your point. So, um, what else do you want to talk about in terms of AI agents? Where do you see this tech going? And I think we already talked about that. So, what are some of the use cases that you see for AI agents right now that could be amazing for people to start building and then developing? Something outside of what we do, but maybe something that may be interesting to others to build, start.
One thing that I found quite interesting is the real-time speech agents. I got to see some OpenAI demos. It's been live for about a year now, I think, but real-time speech is really impressive. Being able to turn on an AI and then have what feels like a very, very natural voice conversation, I think that has power to it. And there are probably use cases that it unlocks that we haven't seen so much yet. Recently, I've been using VO to create full end-to-end videos, and that still takes a lot of time, but basically these rich modalities have come so far, and there will be use cases created by this. So, for example, for NewMail, we've created in the recent weeks with just one person who deeply understands prompting about 20 very high quality 30-second videos.
Hmm.
Um, And if you look at Synthesia, for example, they create personalized videos for sales pitches to your customers. So you or prospects. So you would say, for example, like, this is what we're selling, this is what could resonate, this is this, and then this is my CRM, and it can generate videos with you as an avatar, doing personalized things. So I think maybe personalized video and real-time speech to speech. I think we also mentioned I have a friend working on a company called Cactus Compute that is making basically private on-device like edge AI, so you can use all the smallest models on their compute platform.
Mm.
Um, and that's getting interesting. Like we're all adopting AI into our workflows so deeply that I need AI offline now. So being able to use even a dumb ChatGPT when I'm on the plane, uh, I think it's useful. So yeah,
Extremely
these are a few
useful.
use cases. Do you have use cases in mind you care to share that you haven't shared yet?
No, I think what you mentioned is extremely valuable, and I feel like VO companies that are going to be using VO, that's going to kill companies like Synthesia, or not. Synthesia does the same thing, but it's gonna the barrier to entry that Synthesia had with those AI generated avatars is now gone because you can generate a much higher quality videos, and there is a lot of, to your point about this real time AI agents and and videos, you can combine a lot of these things together into different solutions. I mean,
I
specifically, yep,
I want to say that even though the generation of videos and like animating avatars that is getting much more accessible, barrier to entry is falling. I still think that everybody tells me you're doing scheduling. There should not be any scheduling companies. Why does Calendly even exist? I think if you do any use case, but you just make it really easy for a certain
yes,
type of person or a certain type of group to be able to do it together collaboratively, then there is a space in the market. I don't know how Synthesia really has their enterprise features, but I imagine like currently making avatars of one person in our company is something we've considered, and we might start to do it. But I'm still considering Synthesia because I feel that it's more integrated and tailored and manages edge cases for the kind of video sales use case. Um, and yeah, I think managing use cases, you're a software developer, you know what it's like. There's 1,000 small things that can break.
yes.
And if you know that if I pay $100, then maybe I have 10 edge cases instead of 500 to manage, then maybe that saves me a lot of time if I'm using this frequently. Um,
Yeah, to your point, I'm still using Calendly. I still use Visita, which you embed videos on your site, and that's such a basic thing. Why hasn't anybody killed that? I mean, VCs right now, they're all up in arms. Oh, tomorrow AI is gonna automate all the startups. But guess what? You can build a product, but then taking it to market, that's a whole new thing. Like Calendly has a whole build out funnel of inbound. So they're much better positioned to add AI to their solution than you are with a new Calendly killer to come in and launch and try to get that market share. So,
I also think that the vibe coding, it's kind of a myth that everybody will build their own apps. It doesn't work like that. The complex part is never handling a single user. It's collaboration, working with teams, working with lots of people, working with enterprises. Um,
and you have to be an experienced developer to build solutions like that, and you have to build it on a mature technology stack. A lot of these people are on Reddit now complaining that they build a vibe coding application and got hacked. Well, guess what?
yeah,
Yeah, it will get hacked because you don't know anything. Well, you don't know what you're doing. It's like a designer is going to build an enterprise grade application. No, he's not. No, I'm sorry. There's going
my
to be yeah, they might, but
My favorite example of that was somebody receiving a message from a friend that says, you'll see software developers will not have a job anymore. Look what I built." And then he sends him a link, and the link is localhost 3000.
yes. Look, my local host 3000 is better than your local host 3000. That's it's people misunderstand the complexity of development. It was never writing code was never complicated. It was putting things together and deploying it and making sure it all works together and it doesn't get hacked. That's the hardly as a security researcher, you know that that's getting hacked and getting exploits. That's the worst part of it all, and that's why, and that's also a big part of defensibility. Yeah, yeah. So, do you vibe code? Have you been vibe coding with?
So I use V0 from
Okay,
Vercel
okay.
to quickly prototype interfaces. I think it's powerful to be able to quickly make a front end where you can see how the interactions all work together.
Mm,
But then we have our front end architect actually build, um, and now we're trying to make V0 use our components so that the prototyping looks more like already what we're using. But it's really for prototyping. And what I used to do in Figma, basically now I do it in V0.
mm. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Well, all right, Johan, it was great to have you on the show. I think it was a
Great pleasure, Philip.
very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope we can get you back again, maybe in a year, to see how much has changed on your end and how your company has grown. Would love to have another conversation with you. But yeah, if there's any takeaways that you want to give, let me know to the audience.
I guess if I have to say the last few steps on people interested in agents, where is this going, how to get started, I would say personally, I would pick like a ChatGPT or something like this. Probably all your listeners already have a general AI that they're really good at. Then I would say if you have a company, just make a simple one pager how we use our company data with AI tools, and
Mm,
maybe say we approve a few AI tools, pay for licenses for them so your people can put data in it. Um, there are privacy and things like this concerns, but in cybersecurity, we always say it's about the friction, right? If 1,000 hackers decide to hack you, you're going to be hacked. Um, just make it so that you're not the easiest target. Check your settings, make sure your storage and things like that is good. But go for it. Now is the time to build. Now is the time to try things. I've been in AI for since 2017, and I feel like I'm the old guy on the block. It's still very early days. So if you feel like building something, go for it. Vibe code it, show it to people. It's always a good place to start. There's never been a lower barrier to entry to build something and build some expertise.
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Johan.